Good evening and welcome to Emotika's live interviews. On Mondays, we're meeting interesting people and we are talking with them about some topics that are, we think, valuable for our audience. And today we have our guest, Lina. Hi, Lina.
Hi, good evening.
Lina is representing Speak Up language school, and she is a teacher herself. And she's working also with business clients. Lina, can you please say a few words about yourself?
So as Irina mentioned, I am an English teacher and business client coordinator, and those two spheres really sort of build upon each other, right? Because when you teach, you also plan and coordinate and accommodate for needs. So essentially what I and my colleagues do at Speak Up, we try to provide quality education for adults, essentially.
Quality education for adults. Okay, so you mentioned that in writing, actually, you mentioned it, not in words, that like priorities. You mentioned two priorities as confidence and competence.
Oh yes.
Can you say more about that?
Absolutely, and I think this is one of the fields where Speak Up and Emotika really sort of find common ground, right, and sort of have the same outlook. When it comes to mastering a skill, let's say foreign language, English language, we might be competent to write, for example, emails, or competent to say some things, but in a lot of adults, the biggest sort of issue that we see is lack of confidence, meaning that we have these inner blocks in our minds which prevent us from speaking. So that's one huge part in unlocking your potential, is realizing that you can do it. And really, when adults come in to interviews, to lessons, is a huge part of our progress is sort of trying to make them believe that they can do it. And the other huge additive is enriching their competence with culturally appropriate things. So here's how we say it, here's how we can apply it in various scenarios, and here's how we find knowledge and sort of confidence to do that when you actually have the opportunity.
Oh, so you do actually work a little bit with those skills too, right? With your clients.
Absolutely, you have to work with those skills, right? Just before the stream, we had this little chat with you. If you don't have those skills in your native language, you can't have them in English. Just because you know a pretty phrase, but don't understand or don't realize how to use it, or when it's appropriate, it doesn't really do much. So we need to think broader. We need to think beyond vocabulary, right?
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned that being fluent is really like almost a must today, because we live in the very open world and business is very much international, or at least related in some ways internationally, and that means we need English. So what do you mean by being fluent? Like really getting the language, like we all should strive to be great in English?
That's an excellent point, and thank you for bringing that up. Let's first sort of manage expectations and define what it means to be fluent. Like fluent as in a flow of language. If I am able to express myself, if I am able to communicate what I mean and get my partner to understand me and accommodate me, that's fluent. Right?
Oh, okay.
You don't need to be someone with PR pronunciation. You don't need to be someone who speaks I don't know, academic English on the regular. Language doesn't work like that. It doesn't have to work like that. And we really should manage the expectations. Fluent means able to do things in that language. And, being able to do them professionally certainly helps. And, this is why we're here. And this is why we have this collaboration of ours to really help sort of polish your English. So if you can get the speaking part done, we have some tips on how to get it done professionally. And as you mentioned, the world is international, and we don't even need to think about the US or England. We can think about our neighbors like Poland, Latvia, Estonia. A lot of them speak Russian. That's great, sure. A lot of newer, younger generations don't.
Yeah.
So if we want to attract younger workers, if we want to attract partners, it's a very good skill to have, even if we're talking about our neighbors.
Yeah, actually, that's I feel relief because somehow maybe it comes from school that this being fluent means like almost being native.
Perfect.
Yeah, being perfect. So it really like wow, is it really possible when you don't, when you're not using, for example, a foreign language like every day on daily basis? So being fluent means that you are able to communicate, to get understood, and to agree upon something, and express yourself and understand others, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, why would you need Shakespearean English in business, right? Who speaks like that? No one.
And then you kind of shift a little bit English according to the need of the client. You understand correctly? Like some client can come and he needs like English for, let's say, traveling, and this is different from the manager who comes and needs English for international business, right?
That's a very good point. And yes, if we think about how we acquire language as people, we can sort of reflect on how we are in our native language. If you ask me something that I'm not, trained in, for example, physics, I will not know a lot of the terms, right? I will not know a lot of the vocabulary in my own language. Why would I expect anyone to know the vocabulary in English if they have not been trained in that field? So we can certainly think about our fields of needs, right? Where do we need this language? And when it comes to working with, managers, top level people, they don't have time. They don't have time for abstract nonsense. They don't have time for, how was your day? They need to work on setting tasks. They need to work on negotiations, on communication, appropriate ways to communicate, and small talk is a part of that. But can we focus just on that? No, we need to expand. So yes, we need to think about the fields where we need to be fluent, and English for traveling and English for work are very different. And when we go to English for work, English for IT, English for manufacturing, English for logistics, different languages. There's some overlap, but definitely we're working in those areas.
That's interesting. Okay, I have this question in mind that I want to come back a little bit to. You
Sure.
mentioned vocabulary. Like, yeah, this is probably one of the main things when you're learning a language. You have to have vocabulary, otherwise you can be like super expressive and charismatic, but if you don't have a word, it's gonna be hard. So vocabulary is kind of clear. What are other important elements that or you are teaching, or you just see as important elements in learning the foreign language?
No, yeah, I would agree that vocabulary is among the main building blocks, because if I don't have a word, I probably cannot express myself. I can think about roundabouts, but roundabout ways of saying it, but it's not as efficient. English is a very highly structured language, and I address that in our course on Emotika. And if we understand the basic principles of the fundamental structure of English, it's so much easier to structure your emails, structure your language, understand other people, because it's comical, but it really is almost a daily instance in the world of translators, for example, that we will receive a document that is non-professionally translated, and due to the differences in language structure, the clauses of the agreement just don't say what they say in the native language. Right? So we need to know how to construct those sentences. We need to think about the linguistic difference between, in my case, Lithuanian language, which is my native language, which is very squishy, and in English, which is very highly structured. So that is one of the things that we address everywhere in our language workshops, in our course on Emotika, in private classes, everywhere. And each teacher in Speak Up will address that. And another thing that we will definitely address is comprehension, so how you understand, and the way we will do that. And I tried to integrate that in our course on the Emotika, is you need to immerse yourself into the language. To be able to understand, you need to keep practicing listening, right? To be able to express yourself, you need to keep practicing some sort of language or vocabulary, so you need to keep reading and listening. And that's something that is a huge part of how we train people. We just give you real life information, and we did that in the course too. So once you go to the 6th class, so when you finish the course, you will receive a sort of list of sort of sources that you can add to your media diet.
As we already started talking about this course, can you please say a little bit more, because we just launched the new module on Emotika app, which is English for Executive, meaning like improving your English for business, if it's correct. So can you please say a little bit more? What are the main points? What are the main key ideas of this course?
Now, when we were making this course, and this correlates to the main topic of this broadcast, we thought about the soft skills and the hard errors, right? So we sat down, my colleagues and I, and we made a huge list, several sheets of, paper, just lists of mistakes that we keep hearing over and over and over again, and that we keep addressing in each company we go to. And then we looked at them, and then we set them apart thematically. So, this is routines versus processes, this is negotiations, this is whatever. And we sort of gathered this pool of mistakes, and then we enriched that pool of mistakes with theoretical knowledge as to how to do it correctly. Then we added exercises how to correct those mistakes, and then we added resources for further improvement, because learning can never stop, and I'm sure you know that. We need to keep improving. Just taking one course, it will help in the short term, but if we want long-term gains, we need to keep addressing certain aspects. Back to the course, we also included some sources on listening, on reading. We have very short, very concise videos covering theoretical aspects, which are intertwined with soft skills. So how to say it correctly, but also politely, and how not to over push it. And we kept in mind the executive level. So it's people who already speak English to some extent, and it's people who don't have time to learn. Because that's the biggest constraint. Nobody has time to learn. So we made it as concise, as short, as concentrated as possible.
Can you please also tell us what are those soft skills that you're addressing? You mentioned negotiation, communication.
Yes. So in the course, we sort of have 5 classes. The first 3 are related to routines and processes, and this block of lessons sort of addresses 2 main issues. So in English, we usually hear the mistake made when a person talks about processes and uses ing ending. So for example, I reading a book is incorrect. I'm reading a book, or I read books sort of regularly. So we address that, and then we intertwine that with small talk. how to present yourself when you have the chance, right? Keep something short, like an elevator pitch prepared, that you can rely on in certain situations, that you sort of take it out and then you present it to that conversation and see where it goes. So it sort of allows you to prepare for, simulate linguistic situations and prepare for them in advance. So we have presentations, elevator pitches, and then we have negotiations, and then we have a class addressing pronunciation mistakes, which is a very short sort of intermission class, where we talk about sources on how to improve your pronunciation as a non-native speaker. And the last class is on negotiations, intertwined with some grammatical aspects as well, on modal verbs. So how do I, present what I need, but not over push it,
Mm. Can you say some, I'm really curious because I haven't gone through that course yet. What are those few main mistakes that you keep hearing all the time that people without understanding?
And if my colleagues are watching, so the first thing that comes to mind is, from pronunciation aspect, Lithuanians love saying development. Everyone loves saying that, and I'm sure you've heard that. It's development. And we address that I think in every IT company we go to. Someone usually will say it incorrectly. And another thing is, with modal verbs, we will often hear, I must to do something. It doesn't work like that. I must do something. And it's not that it's a very huge mistake or that you will be not understood, but it polishes your language, makes you more professional. Right? And one more thing is the distinction between routines and processes. So again, which tense to use, and we go deeper on that in the course. And you had a question for me, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, do you have an experience with speaking, communicating with the English native speakers, and do you have some tips from them, what bothers them the most, what they cannot stand when foreign people say or how they say it?
That's a very solid point and the question, thank you. Yes, I do have the experience. I did work quite a bit before Speak Up in the service industry for the UK mainly, and well, it's really sort of this experience is really something that taught me, how to approach language and not to try and pretend to be British when I'm not, because they can always tell. And having an expectation for yourself that I will sound like an American or I will sound like a British person, it's a bad expectation, because you will get disappointed because you will not reach it, because you're not British, right? We didn't grow up in that linguistic field. Our sort of mouths are used to different sort of vowels and consonants. So it's, we can train ourselves to speak, but we will never, sound just like natives. Now, when it comes to them, I think keeping it simple will really prevent a lot of frustration and miscommunication. So the fancier we try to sound, the more we have to, artificially inflate our language and make it more flowery, the more likely it is that the person on the receiving end will look at you like, what do you mean?
Why?
What's happening? So keeping it simple will really sort of prevent you from having that. And I'm not sure if they can't stand anything. I think it's a very personal thing what you can't stand. But yeah, keeping it simple really sort of prevents a lot of unpleasant situations.
Yeah, well, that is one of the basic rules in effective communication. If you
Absolutely.
be clear, if you can say it shorter, just do it. Unless you are in some very specific audience, that the style is different. But in general, the shorter, the clearer the message, the better. Yeah.
Yeah. And we circle back to soft skills, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. It's so intertwined.
Mm. But from in my experience, I really met quite some people that that are very embarrassed to speak in English, although they speak okay to my eyes, but they are
Yes.
embarrassed, and that stops them from like going further with that. Um, what can you suggest to those people? Like if somebody who is listening right now and not feeling
Mhm.
very confident about their skills.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. That happens daily.
Mm.
That's our bread and butter. Because there's people who can speak but just won't speak. My main sort of approach would be, and I know it's hard. I know it's hard to do that, but try and allow yourself to be an amateur. It's okay if you don't know yet, right? You'll learn. It's fine. You don't have to be perfect. That's an unhealthy expectation, and the sooner you let go of needing to sound perfect, the better it is. And that's very, very hard, I know.
Mm.
But and I know that from personal experience. I have learned French in university, and when I went to France, I was frozen. I couldn't speak because of this fear. So just accept that fear. It's okay to have it, and try and make it your companion. And give yourself credit. If you can express yourself, if you can say the thing that you want to say and the other person understood, good job, you're fluent. Keep doing it.
Yeah, that sounds highly motivating.
Well,
Nice. I also remember the thing that I really wanted to ask you, because I was discussing it many times with my friends and colleagues that are from different countries. It looks like that when we speak different language, we actually express ourselves differently.
Mhm.
Have you noticed that? Do you have can you reveal some mystery in in here? It's like you
We linguists create alternate personalities for people.
yeah, but
I'm
kind
kidding.
of really.
But there are studies on that actually, and it is quite an interesting phenomenon. I'm really just an amateur in this field, but I noticed that myself, and I know that my friends who like creative writing, Lithuanian friends, if they write in English, they say the stories feel different. So there's
Mm.
definitely this aspect of different personality, and the theory on that is there's a hypothesis that. When we learn a language, it sort of occupies a different space in our brains, and it comes with its own personality. So you have a personality for each language. If there are any neurologists watching, they're probably angry at the oversimplification, but there is scientific basis for that. Good observation.
Do you have any have you read or have you noticed what are those personalities, like Lithuanian or English?
I've noticed, and that's purely empirical, and what I noticed from my just circles, people tend to be more honest and confident in English. And the theory, my friend and I discussed this. Why is that? And probably because your native language feels so much more intimate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And English feels, a little bit more removed, safer, and that's why maybe we feel, not as naked in English, if I can say that.
Mm.
But that's purely, my theory on the matter.
Uh, from my very also empirical observations, very subjective point of view, really, it's but maybe because English is so structured, it's often easier to express yourself in English. And when, like, I studied quite a bit in English, and
Mhm.
then if I need to take some ideas or techniques and bring it to Lithuanian, it's really a job to find words sometimes, like even like simple kind of, not something really, not a high terminology, but it's in English you can say it shorter and clearer, seems like.
Yeah, true. Definitely, and that's a huge challenge for modern translators because English has such a variety of topics. So, if we talk about human relations or the soft skills, the terminology there is so hard to translate, and our
Mm,
translations are lagging behind. So we will get those terms eventually, but now they're clumsy, right?
mm,
Yeah, that's a good
mm,
point, actually.
mm. What else did we miss something talking about those soft skills and importance in international business? Did I, maybe I didn't ask something really important that should be noted in our conversation?
Let me think about it. Well, my main point would be, for anyone listening and for anyone who wants to take something away is um, allow yourself to be in English, right? To speak in English, to communicate in English. You know how to do it. It's fine. You can have an international business relation with someone. Don't prohibit yourself just because you have fears. And Emotica is a great way to sort of tackle those fears and unlock your potential.
Mm. By the way, do you meet this obstacle that some people prefer learning from native speakers?
Oh, absolutely. There's
What's your
definitely.
opinion on that?
Now, there is this, I don't know if, how to call it, but there is this line of thought that if someone is native, they're better at teaching the language. But I would like to raise the point that um, they haven't studied their language as deeply as a non-native has. So they might not even see some of the grammatical aspects that you need to learn. So you might ask your teacher and they might go, what? And a non-native teacher usually will have studied that and will be able to tell you. But again, I will not say that native teachers, native speakers cannot be teachers. Some of them are great teachers, and we have some at our school. But again, we need to choose appropriately. If you're a new learner, maybe choose someone who learned the language and can sort of give it to you bit by bit. And then once you progress to a certain level of fluency, once you can speak a little bit, then go for a native. Uh,
Mm,
exactly for that, spoken practice. So again, everything has its own place in the learning landscape, and you should take it, take advantage of each of the possibilities. And with digital learning tools too, right? You will not learn everything from digital tools, but you can certainly learn a lot.
mm. And what's your opinion about all those apps teaching languages? Is it
Um,
like a good tool to start, or you can actually nail the language with that tool? Or
Excellent question. And again, let's think about language in terms of function. So we have communicative function, we have, receptive function. So how we say, right, how the other person hears, and how we hear. And we need to work on certain skills for that. So we need to internalize grammar and learn grammatical structures. And apps are wonderful for that. Apps
mm,
are wonderful for learning grammar, for learning vocabulary, for solving exercises very conveniently, and they give you instant feedback. If we talk about, Emotica, it's a very great way to get a quick dose. It's not basic. It's not a basic level sort of matter, but it's quick and it will, help you boost yourself before certain, event or something like that. So
mm,
there's place for everything. But if we want to talk about, spoken language and the way we speak and the way we listen, if we keep solving grammar exercises, your speaking won't get better. You need to speak with someone for your speaking to get better.
mm. Yeah, okay. So that's a very good additional tool to
It
have.
is a good additional tool, absolutely. And depending on what you need, right? If you need to study for an exam, it's great.
Yeah. And I just remembered one app. I don't remember the name, but uh, my husband is English speaker, and he was preparing for some kind of an exam or something. I'm not sure what. It was a long ago, but he was himself learning English on an app, like because he was working on his vocabulary in specific field. Oh, I was amazed, like, oh my God, if he needs to do that, am I ever gonna reach at least medium level of English? It's
That's
never.
a wonderful story. Thanks for sharing. And see,
Yeah.
that's how it is with language.
Yeah. And I would like to also ask you, from an educator perspective. So you are working with people, with adults. You're teaching adults. What are the main challenges you face? You already mentioned those fears or not feeling confident. What else is like challenging?
That's quite a rich field. We can sort of think about it in various aspects. And so fear is a big factor. And sometimes that fear or discomfort in your own level manifests as, feeling hostile towards the teacher. No, you won't tell me how to speak. I know. So that's something you need to sort of mediate and manage. But having an honest, transparent conversation usually helps. And if we manage expectations, that's also good. Then we have the sort of issue but that requires a lot of preparation on the teacher's part. Highly specific technical things, right? When a student comes in and the teacher really needs to step up, but that's what we do, right? That's why we learn about the company and we learn about what the people do. So those highly technical aspects are quite challenging, but very necessary. And what else? Lack of time. It's definitely a progress killer. Nobody has time, and if you don't have time, you don't have results. And to actually address that, the school and I too decided to do a 30-day challenge in November. So on our Instagram page, each day we're broadcasting techniques up to 10 minutes on how to work on your skill, because that's something we usually hear. I don't have time. Well, you have 10 minutes. I mean,
yeah. And how did that challenge go?
It's still going, and it's going quite well. I think the reaction is quite positive. People like seeing, and it's quite satisfying to see someone else, do something, finish something. So I think that's why it's going quite well. Well, November has only had 80 days so far, so I think we can speak in December on how it goes.
Yeah.
But I think that Emotika also addresses this issue of not having time. You have 10 minutes, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's the main idea of, this creating courses using this micro-learning principle, when all the material, theory and exercises, everything is created in those little bites that you can just often connect for like 10-15 minutes. The more often the better, the less time the better, because there is no point just watching 2 hours overwhelming lecture and then remembering 10%, if we're talking about skills. And if we're talking about training skills, it takes frequent repeating and practicing in different situations. So yeah, that's micro learning, that we believe this is really something that is effective.
Absolutely, I would fully agree with you. And we can't only rely on the educators. The biggest educator in your life is you, right? You choose how to module your time, how to sort of prioritize things. And I know, believe me, I know that many things are a bigger priority, but your sort of development is also a priority. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, I just the other day just met my neighbor, and she's in movie industry, and she's also teaching teenagers about making movies and stuff like that. and she was angry, and I said, "What's going on?" She said, I'm just going to have a lecture right now with those teenagers, and they didn't do any homework. I'm giving my time here. My effort. What's going on?" I said, chill. Adults are very similar.
Yeah, but exactly.
So when you talk about teenagers, yeah.
Well, I mean, who do teenagers learn from? They learn from us. So the way we address, our responsibilities in learning, the way they address it.
Yeah. Do you have some tips and tricks for audience? Like if somebody wants to start, doesn't matter the level, but they want to start. They say, "Oh my God, I have to work with my English. I want to do that."
Okay.
What would be the way? What would be your tips?
I will be a total buzzkill, but don't rely on that motivation. Be prepared to back it up with work, because in 2 weeks your motivation will end, and that's when the work begins, right? So think about that. Realize what kind of learner you are, and come into the process committed, because you will come out the other end more enriched, better, more developed, more competent. So think about that before you start. And if you really want to start now, start by keeping contact with language. So turn on, A1 level TV show. YouTube's full of them, whatever language you want, German, French, English. Um, Usually, if you're talking about English, there's a good chance that the person already knows something. So don't start with A1 because it's too easy. And that's another mistake people make. They come in and say, "I need everything from A1 level. From A0, I know nothing." And then you start talking with them and you can have a conversation. Like, you know. So see what you're comfortable with. Start watching TV shows. Find something you're interested in general, and don't force, boring things, because your time is precious. So surround yourself with what interests you, and that's how we manage that motivational crash after 2 weeks. If you're interested, well, it's, maybe I won't do grammar, but I will read something on Reddit, or I will watch a YouTube video by a YouTuber I like. That's good. That's practice. Keep doing that.
Yeah, that's a good point, to choose level right, because if it's too challenging, it will crash motivation. If it's too easy, it will still crash it. So it's
Exactly.
important to find the right track.
And also, it's very good to have a commitment with someone. So commit to a teacher, or your spouse, or your colleague, or whoever. Just,
And ask them to check in, to keep checking how are you, what's going on, so you feel that someone is there. Yeah, that's a
exactly.
good point. Okay, Lina, thank you so much for your time, for the conversation. I would like to ask you, as I always do, the same question. What is your wish for the audience? Oh,
Keep learning, pursue your self-development, and just keep granting yourself gifts of uh, courses and knowledge. And I think the more we learn, the better we are. So that's my wishes for the audience.
Thank you so much, Lina. Thank you, everybody who were listening. And if you get committed and not only motivated, but also committed, Speak Up Language School is there for you. And also, we have one course on Emotika. So thank you again, Lina, and see you soon.
See you soon. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.